those vote reminders only went to people who call themselves liberal, and not one of our conservative field agents received a vote reminder.
During his 2020 election monitoring project, Dr. Robert Epstein found stark data showing Google election bias, he says, and he's only just started to pore through all the data that was collected. In this episode, Dr. Epstein, a senior research psychologist at the American Institute for Behavioral Research and Technology, explains what he's found so far and why he believes the public has the ability to stop big tech election bias, even without legislative action. This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jan Jekielek. Dr. Robert Epstein, such a pleasure to have you back on American Thought Leaders.
It's my pleasure, of course.
Dr. Epstein, you have some pretty significant, I guess I could say, allegations of activity from Google that basically suggests that Google was disproportionately targeting basically Democratic voters with messaging about getting out the vote. And I'm hoping you can actually speak to that to start us off. And of course, this is all part of a large monitoring project that you've been involved in for many years now.
Yes, well, first of all, let me say I don't have any allegations. I have some data that my team and I have collected. I should also say, I think it's relevant to this issue, is that I was contacted by a pretty prominent Washington, D.C. attorney a few days ago who thinks I should go into hiding. But I have no allegations. I do have some data, and I think they're possibly quite important data.
So tell me about these data, please.
Well, you need a little background. I mean, we've set up systems since 2016 to try to determine what the big tech companies were showing people in the days leading up to the 2016, 2018, and now the 2020 election. So to do that, we recruit people we call field agents. We had 95 of them back in 2016. And we equip them with special software, which allows us, in effect, to look over their shoulders as they're doing election-related activities on the internet. For example, doing searches on Google, Bing, and Yahoo. And this year, what we did was far more ambitious. In 2016, we were able to preserve 13,000 what Google calls ephemeral experiences. In this case, is searches on Google, Bing, and Yahoo. Ephemeral experiences, that's a very important phrase. It means those experiences we have online that involve very fleeting content that impacts us, disappears, and is gone forever and can't be analyzed because it disappears. That's the whole point. And we know from leaks from Google that ephemeral experiences are used quite deliberately and strategically to shift people's thinking and behavior. That's beyond any doubt at this point. So the point is this year that we recruited not 95 field agents, but 733 field agents deliberately in 3 very critical battleground states. Those are Arizona, Florida, and North Carolina. We wanted to go where the action was, where we would be most likely to find some evidence of bias or manipulation. And we have indeed found evidence of bias, and we've also found what some people might want to call a smoking gun. We found that during the week of October 26th, that's quite close to the election, only our liberal field agents were getting vote reminders on Google's home page. I deliberately began to go public with this information on Thursday, the 29th. I shared a lot of information with a reporter from the New York Post, and that was quite strategic on my part because I knew that all New York Post emails are shared with Google. I wrote about that in an article a couple of years ago, and the same is true for the New York Times, The Guardian, and a lot of other major media sources. Not your source, but definitely New York Post. Those emails are shared. So I knew that all the information I was giving to this reporter would be seen by Google. With my name in there, I assumed an algorithm would immediately boot it upstairs to real people, and then real people would look at all this information. The point is that two things happened that night. That was Thursday night, October 29th. Number one, the article, which I gather was about to go to press, got pulled from the New York Post. So think about that. That's a fairly conservative news outlet, and in effect, I got censored by this news outlet. Relevant there, perhaps, is the fact that the New York Post gets 32% of its traffic from Google. Maybe someone reminded someone else at the New York Post that that they're quite vulnerable to being harmed by Google. In other words, Google has the power literally to put them out of business almost overnight. The other thing that happened was that that targeted messaging on Google's homepage, it disappeared. It was like someone flipped a light switch and it just disappeared. So starting at midnight on October 29th, just days before the election, all of our field agents began to receive that vote reminder on Google's homepage, and that continued until the very end of Election Day on November 3rd. So was certainly one of the interesting findings that we've detected so far. But then it took a step in another direction, because at that point I was receiving calls from various members of Congress and some AGs that I work with, and I explained to them what we had found. Next thing I knew, this was November the 5th, I believe, so really right after the election, 3 U.S. senators sent a letter to the CEO of Google talking about some of my findings and basically accusing him of lying before Congress, which is a felony, when he said that we never, ever, ever tilt any of our content toward one political party or another. And so they're going after him based on my data, and that could explain why that Washington, D.C. attorney told me I should go into hiding.
Dr. Epstein, is there any chance that this data was somehow wrong? And the other question is, did you just start monitoring this from the 26th, or did the results, as you described them, just start on the 26th?
The 26th is the day we decided that we were fully operational. At that point, we had over 500 field agents. It takes a while to get a system like this going. There's a lot of recruitment involved. There's a lot of technical challenges. We were being attacked digitally more so than ever before in previous monitoring projects. One DDoS attack, that's distributed denial of service attack, was pretty serious. So we had some outages, but basically on Monday the 26th, we decided we were fully operational. And so we've just been focusing our analysis of data on data we received from that point forward. Over time, of course, we're going to look at everything we have, but at the moment that's our focus. Basically, about a week before the election, in other words, to see what was going on. Keep in mind that the most dramatic kinds of manipulations are going to occur close to the election, very close to the election, because that's when you want to do 3 things if you can. If you're supporting one candidate, of course, you want to mobilize the base. In other words, you want to get those voters off of their sofas if they haven't yet voted by mail. Secondly, you want to discourage supporters of the candidate you oppose from voting. So you want to keep those people home. But most important of all, and that's where our monitoring project is very important, you want to impact the people who are still undecided. And it's those last few days, those are absolutely critical. That's where you're going to apply the most pressure you can in every way you can to try to nudge those undecided voters in one direction or the other. Those are the people who end up deciding. Normally, in a close election, those people decide who wins.
Is there any chance that your data is wrong? I mean, this is pretty stark. You're basically saying that for 3 days at least, voting reminders were going to purely one, I guess, ideological group.
Well, it would be 4 days, the 26th through the 29th. I don't know how to answer the question. I mean, I was startled when I saw the numbers appear on my screen. And I can't say for sure what people around the country were getting, but I can say that we had recruited a diverse group of 733 registered voters, Republicans, Democrats, and independents. And I can say that during that period of time, our field agents who identified themselves as liberal, they all got this vote reminder on Google's homepage. I can say that among those who called themselves conservative, not a single person saw that reminder on the homepage. Now, that's a strange thing to see on a computer screen when you're looking at data, because you have 100% in one group and a 0% in the other group. One doesn't see that very often. Let's put it this way. You don't need to do a statistical analysis to see if there's any difference between the two groups. 100% versus 0%. Let's think about it another way. Let's say that Google was monitoring us, and if I were Google, I would have been monitoring us. I mean, they wouldn't alter our data to have that pattern. This just doesn't make any sense. We also have an enormous number of security precautions in place when we do these projects. I won't go into detail, but the point is that although we can be attacked and our system's frozen for short periods of time, there's no way for anyone really to change the data. So what we're seeing what the field agents are seeing. In effect, we are looking over their shoulders using software, and this is with their permission. We're looking over their shoulders, and we're seeing what they see on their screens. And what we saw during that period was that, again, those vote reminders only went to people who call themselves liberal, and not one of our conservative field agents received a vote reminder. Again, I'm not making any allegations. I'm simply reporting what we found. And of course, we also found a bias in Google search results and other things. And we've preserved so much data, it's going to take us really months to understand what we have. And the main point of this project, of course, is to preserve content that is normally lost forever. This is all ephemeral content. And the folks at Google know this. In a leak of emails to the Wall Street Journal in 2018, one Google employee says to others, "How can we use ephemeral experiences to change people's views about Trump's travel ban?" Now that's from inside Google. I mean, they know that ephemeral experiences like search results or reminders on the home page or search suggestions, news feeds, they're ephemeral. They appear in front of your eyes, they impact you, they disappear, they're gone forever. No one can go back in time and see what these companies were showing people or saying to people on their personal assistant devices. So that's what we've done that is quite unique, is we have preserved, in 2016, 13,000 ephemeral experiences, which are normally lost forever. And this time we preserved more than 500,000 of all sorts, by the way. We preserve Google home pages, Google search results, and of course, Bing and Yahoo search results, but also YouTube sequences, thousands of YouTube sequences. We preserved Facebook home pages. What kinds of messaging was Facebook sending to its members, its users? We've only taken a quick stab at that. We're not really sure yet, and that's because, of course, the Facebook homepage is quite complex, whereas the Google homepage is quite simple. So we will, at some point, have an answer, and we'll know whether there was any kind of targeted messaging on Facebook's homepage as well. If there was, I mean, we're talking about the possibility that maybe a number of Silicon Valley companies were all brazenly pushing votes in just one direction. And I calculated months ago that if all the Silicon Valley companies, the most powerful two being Google and Facebook, if they're all pushing in the same direction, that could easily shift in this election to 15 million votes, which means they, in effect, decide who the next president is going to be. Now, I lean left myself. I think it's great that they're pushing causes and candidates that I like and that my family likes. But, you know, I put democracy and I put the free and fair election, I put our country ahead of any personal preferences I might have for a candidate or a party. And the fact is, if we allow companies like Google to control the outcome of our elections, then we have no democracy. There is no free and fair election. All of that is illusory. And in effect, we have behind the scenes technology lords, technology masters who are actually running the show. And to me, that is unacceptable, even if they're supporting candidates and causes that I like. That is unacceptable. In my opinion, that should be unacceptable to all Americans, no matter what your party is. And if you're out there, my Democrat friends and family, if you're out there listening and you don't like what I'm saying, then shame on you. Shame on you. Because you don't know tomorrow who these companies are going to be favoring. What they do is not transparent. And they're not accountable to the American public, unlike our elected officials. They're not accountable. What they do is highly secretive. You don't know what they're going to be doing next. You don't know what they're doing in other countries, for example. We have evidence that in Cuba, for example, they don't support the left. They support the right in Cuba because the left are in power and the left doesn't like companies like Google. So they support the right. In China, mainland China, Google has worked with the Chinese government to help spy on and control the Chinese people. There was a tremendous revelation just over a year ago of a secret Google project called Dragonfly, in which Google was basically going back into China, working with the Chinese government to help them control their population. So again, I'm speaking now to my Democrat friends and family. I love you, but if you're mad at me for what I'm saying, then shame on you.